Spaces where you exit. Keep your head up. Press your foot on the pedal and never let up. If they say that you can't, that's when you get up and stand. Show them you can. Baby, you know you got it. Please don't let nothing stop it. What other option but to? And no matter the hate, just remember you're great. Shout out and say Vanguard for the.
Hello, everyone. I'm your host, Amber Reese, and welcome to another episode of the AM Perspective Pod. And today's guest, as you guys know, March is CP Awareness Month, and to help me kick it off, I have two people that known me since I was a grasshopper, and I want to introduce them. We have Mr. Paul, direct physical therapist, and Miss Suzy, star physical therapist. How you guys doing? It's so good to see you guys.
Good to see you too.
Thank you. So what made you guys wanted to get started in physical therapy?
Should I go first?
Yes.
Sure. Okay. So when I was a young teenager, I had a job babysitting for a small child with cerebral palsy. And my job was to take her swimming at a swimming pool and help her ride a tricycle and walk with her crutches. And I was kind of a mother's helper. I did this 3 days a week. And I didn't really know anything about physical therapy at that time. I thought I wanted to be a history teacher, actually. And but all of the people that I met when I was working with this little girl would say, "Are you going to be a physical therapist?" And I said, "Oh no, I'm going to be a history teacher." Well, after I started thinking about it and learned more about physical therapy, I decided that that's what I really did want to do. So I did pursue a career in physical therapy and have worked for years as a physical therapist. So it was my experience in working with a young child with cerebral palsy that made me interested in the field.
So you said she was walking with crutches. So did that mean she had the tendon surgery?
Could you repeat that question?
You said she was walking with crutches. So did that mean she had the tendon surgery?
Well, actually, that was one of my jobs. So I worked with her for several summers, and I actually still know her well, 50 years later. But one of the reasons I worked with her was because a couple of those summers, she had adductor releases of her hips, and one summer she had heel cord releases of her ankles. So she was in casts for the summer, and her mother was kind of at wit's end how to entertain her all the time because she had to sit in these casts. So that was why I was called in. We played a lot of Candyland and played with her Barbies and all that she could do. And she had a wheelchair that I could take her out and walk around the neighborhood in the wheelchair. But the other summers, I worked with her in the pool and actually taught her to swim in the pool. So yes, she did have surgery, many surgeries.
Right, yeah. And for those that don't know, when I say tendon surgery, it's basically where they go in and they lengthen the tendons, which are located in the back of your leg. They can either cut bone or not. I had to have it at 14. But I heard that it's better to do it when the child is young because you get better results. Unfortunately, I didn't find out till later, so, you know. But, to each its
Sometimes it
own.
has to be repeated though, Amber. Sometimes
Right.
when they do it when you're 6, you grow so much by the time you're 15 you need to do it again.
Well, in my case, that would have been the scenario if we would have did it sooner instead of just directly at 14. Well, yeah, due to the spasticity. Yeah. And Mr. Paul, how about you?
So my story is a little bit different. I out as a in the with a degree in business administration, and then I went into the Navy and I served as a naval officer in the business management branch of the Navy. Then I got out and I managed high-rise office buildings in New York City. And while I was doing that, I wasn't really happy with that. My father sent me an article about physical therapy, and I had known a little bit about physical therapy from having worked in high school and college many years ago, about the same time that Suzy was working with this little girl. I was working in a hospital as an orderly, and I loved that work. And so my father sent me this article about physical therapy, and I started thinking about it, and I ended up changing careers. I went back to graduate school. I was the oldest student in my class. The youngest student was half my age, and I finished and loved it. And from the first time I walked into the first hospital that I worked in when I was a student, I remember walking into the hospital, and I felt like I was home.
Wow,
Having
that's
worked in the
awesome.
hospital for a number of years, so I've been doing it now for not as many years as Suzy did it. I don't think anybody's going to match her record.
Yeah, 'cause Suzy's been out there, like I said, she's known me since what, from 5 to...
No, I think I knew you when you were 3, didn't I?
Oh, birth. Oh, yeah, that's right, 'cause we started
After
back
you
in
left
birth
three,
to
yeah.
birth to 3. Yeah, yeah. So yeah. So, and I think what you started with me, Mr. Paul, when I was about what, like 8, 9ish.
Yeah, I think it was at Madison.
I think no, 'cause I went to Park City. I went to Park City Magnet, I
Oh,
think.
Park City. Okay, yeah.
Yeah, 'cause originally it was Howland, then Park City Magnet, and then yeah.
Yeah, I don't
No,
think
it was
I knew you
originally
from
Skane.
Well, no, I'm talking about for Paul.
Oh, for
I
Paul.
think it was Howland. Then he transferred over with me to Park City Magnet.
Yeah.
Mhm. So how often, um, after a child is diagnosed with cerebral palsy, should they start physical therapy?
So,
Yeah,
who's going first on it? You wanted to go first on that?
yeah. We're probably saying the same things as Suzy. Go ahead.
So some children are diagnosed. Children are diagnosed at different times. Sometimes, if a child is very premature, they're not diagnosed with cerebral palsy right away, but they pick up. Birth to 3 picks them up almost immediately because there's concern that there might be some delays or issues. So that happens. There's other children that maybe aren't that have a more typical birth history and really no red flags until they start presenting with difficulties moving, because cerebral palsy is really a movement disorder. So sometimes it gets picked up if they're having trouble feeding when they're infants, but very often children go undiagnosed until they're about a year old, when they're not really crawling well or walking. That is usually a big red flag. So some children are diagnosed at that time.
Right. Yeah, 'cause even though I was born with it, I got diagnosed at 3. So yeah.
Yeah.
Mhm. And you, Mr. Paul?
Yeah, no, I think what Suzy said is exactly right. It's each child is an individual. There are certainly markers that the pediatrician looks for, and that the parents, if they're paying attention, are looking for. And when the child does not do the things they're supposed to do at particular number of months, sitting up by 6 months, walking at a year, things like that, other movements of their hands and feet, that's when those are sort of red flags that come up. And for each child, that age might be different. But the important thing for your listeners is that if you are a young parent, to pay attention to the milestones of your child. Listen to the pediatrician, pay attention. There are a number of very good books out there of things the child is supposed to be doing at a certain age, at a certain number of months, certain number of years. And if the child is not doing those things, please tell the pediatrician, and so the pediatrician can look more closely at that child as he or she grows.
Right, because information is more privileged now versus than when I was born. So it's like mommy had to do a lot of uncovering just to find out, like, hey, this is, what's going on. So, yeah. So make sure if you guys are noticing no milestone reaching, make sure you guys reach out and get that information, because that will save you and your child in the long run, so you can know what's going on and how to better advocate for your child. What are your favorite and least favorite stretches to do on a patient?
I guess I'll go first since you took the last couple, Suzy. I think probably hamstring stretches those are probably the more difficult for a lot of kids with CP. They have their knees don't go all the way straight, and
Right.
so putting a child on his or her back and then gently moving that limb up.
Oh boy.
That's and doing so in a way that is an effective stretch, but is not causing pain. And so some of the kids, we're always watching the facial expressions, because the child say "ow," but you can see the change in the face if you're pushing too hard. So I guess that would be my the one that's more difficult.
And what's your favorite one to do?
Suzy?
My favorite? So I guess you're posing this question because obviously Amber has favorites and
disclaimer.
Those weren't incurred when she was working with me. But I guess I think after many years of stretching and not stretching, I think for most people, if you can provide a situation where you can elongate a muscle and not really stretch it per se, you're probably in the best position to be in, because the child or adult will not experience pain and be willing to get into that position more frequently, which will help elongate the muscle. Now, Paul and I, being having intact nervous systems, certainly remember back in our elementary school where we used to stand up in gym class and we'd bend over, we had to try to touch our toes. So that was in essence stretching our hamstrings, and we did it too. So I don't think either one of us were terribly comfortable doing that in gym class, but we remember that pull that we got on the back of our legs when we stretched. So I guess if we can provide a way for people to elongate their muscles without pain for a prolonged period of time, is probably better. So if we can get a child on the floor playing with the toy, reaching to grasp something, stretching their hamstrings in that way, it's probably better than straight out just stretching their hamstrings, because they'll do it more frequently or allow us to help them facilitate that movement better.
Disclaimer, I really didn't like getting stretched, no offense. The only reason, I was the child that was like, I will give you face, shout out to mom, because I was very expressive with my face, but I'll also be like, hey, this is not the one, this is not the day, this is not the day. I mean, at least Miss Suzy, she made it more enjoyable because we had music.
You were 3 and 4 and 5 years old. If I stretched you and it hurt you, you would scream and you'd never let me do anything with you again. So what you do with a child who's 3 or 4 is very different when you have a 15 or 16-year-old and say, it's really important that you do these stretches, and this is the reason why. But a 3-year-old can't.
Oh no, but I was very verbal because I was talking.
You were verbal, but you still didn't have the ability to understand the future and why you needed to do this. So you had to make it a game.
I mean, but for me, one of the things that mommy, would coach me on, like, hey, this is for the betterment of you. Like, we have to do therapy. Like, one of her incentives was, sorry guys, was when she would when we would go to the Alvin Center, she would hold up money. So she would walk around and be like, hey, you want $20? Hey, here's $30. Hey, come on, follow mommy.
And really wanted $1 for the candy machine.
it would just go up and up. So that was kind of one of her ways to, and music was always a big thing, with my childhood. And one thing about Miss Suzy, back in skiing, because I really thought, I was a songbird. That would have been one of my professions growing up. She always, there was some type of music, So it's like Mr. Paul, he kind of would just talk to you to get you going, but once he gave you that pep talk, it's like, okay, I'm okay now. Like, I could do it. But no, I was one of those kids that always loved or disliked physical therapy. It depended on the day and how the mood was.
That's honest.
Yeah. What advice would you give to someone who wants to start a profession in physical therapy? Anybody could take that first.
Okay, I'll do that one first. I think that you need to be realistic about the coursework first. Well, I guess first you need to be realistic about what physical therapy involves. So certainly talking with other therapists, to find out what their experience is like. If you have a situation where a family member is going to physical therapy, accompany them so you can get in and see what it's like. Because of all the HIPAA regulations, we're not allowed to bring in a lot of people in to see physical therapy programs. But if you have knowledge of someone in your family going, or a friend who's had experience, you certainly gather information that way. But I think that knowledge of the coursework is also important. There's a lot of science, a lot of math, and if you say, I really want to be a physical therapist, but I hate biology, I can't stand chemistry, this is not a profession for you because you won't get through the coursework. So being realistic about the coursework and the academic requirements is important. I mean, if you love to sing and act in plays, but you really aren't good at math and aren't good at science, you need to probably think of another profession because there's just so much of that. And then, of course, certainly talking to your counselor at school because they have, knowledge. Well, actually, the internet tells you where all the schools are, and taking the time to go visit a school that teaches physical therapy and take a tour, talk to the admissions people about what it takes, because when you're in high school, you have to have the right academic credentials to apply. So that's my advice.
Yeah, so to tack on to what Suzy said, which is all very, very just great stuff. When I was changing careers, the track that I took was, I know that this was before the internet. I researched physical therapy as well as some other professions, and there is a book published by the U.S. Department of Labor called the Occupational Outlook Handbook. And that is now online. And in that book, you can look up every possible job in the United States. And it gives lots of information, such as what are the physical demands, what is the pay. They do a projection for the 10 years going out, what the employment prospects are, what the academic requirements are. So that's one way to begin the process of learning about physical therapy. The other thing that I did that was really the most important was there's a thing called the Yellow Pages. That's like a phone book. Nowadays, you just get your phone out.
Yes, but if you guys remember phone books, it was either the yellow pages or the white pages.
That's it. That's it. So I got the phone book out, and I found physical therapists in many different places where they worked, and I called them up, and I said, this is who I am. I'm changing careers. Do you have a few minutes? I'd like to spend some time and just ask you a few questions about physical therapy. So I met with people in private practice. I met with people in a hospital. I met with people who work with children. So I learned a lot by just making a phone call. I didn't really watch them treat, but I learned a lot by planning the questions I was going to ask. And one of the biggest questions that I asked was, what do you not like about what you do? If you had a magic wand and could change it, what would you change? So I also asked them why they went into it. And some people said, well, I was injured. I had a physical therapist. I had a sports injury. But many people had many, many different reasons. So I would advise them to, as Suzy said, learn everything about physical therapy and try to take a sort of an inventory of your own skills, likes and dislikes, things you succeed in and things that you fail at. And try to match that up with the demands of both the academics of physical therapy, which never really end, and the and actually hands-on doing the job.
Okay, guys, we have just about 6 minutes left, so I'm gonna try to go through these questions as best as I can.
Okay.
But what have been some of your favorite memories of me? And I'm curious. Go easy, guys.
Treating Amber was one of the favorite memories.
Yes.
How about that for a short answer?
Yes.
Well, one of the things that I've found the most enjoyable for me is not necessarily the time I was spending with the child, but seeing the end result. So the fact that you call me up and ask me to do something like this makes me immensely proud that I maybe had one little tenth of a degree to help you along your journey.
Thank you.
And there's been quite a few of the kids that I worked with and the patients that I've known that I've bumped into or reconnected with later. And that has been a joy for me to see what the end product was. So that was that we kind of come in and out of people's lives, but it's interesting to see how great they've done after we've gone.
Definitely. I can say you, Miss Suzy, you always were very encouraging. Both you guys always made, our time, very enjoyable. Mr. Paul, you was kind of tough on me over the years, but I can say, your toughness has definitely, made me become, more independent over the years. As you guys know, I'm able to get in and out of my chair by myself. I could get myself up from the floor. I could transfer myself onto the toilet now. So I'm just proud to see, within the last 4 years, how much I've grown. Like I said, this is coming from somebody who really didn't like therapy growing up because it was just like, oh, we gotta stretch. Oh, we gotta. I mean, walking wasn't too bad because I love being in the walker, but you know, being that I have spastic cerebral palsy, the muscle tone is very tight. So it was very hard to do a lot of things, and I think I doubted myself in a lot of areas when it came to therapy because it was like, well, I mean, you got the wheelchair, and later on, my last year of junior high, we got the power chair. So it was like, well, you kind of don't need it because you still got people around. But I've learned that being independent is you have to start when you're young because it's really going to kick into when you're an adult and you really don't realize how much you need therapy until you get older to actually look back and be like, oh, this is why mommy used to say it's for the betterment of you, or this is why, she would be on you about wearing those night braces or your AFOs. But see, me, I was smart. I used to watch how her and Tim used to take them off, and I would snatch them off once they go out the room because I was like, I am not one for pain. Um, but my last question to you guys, what would you tell your younger selves, about going into your profession?
Good question. I guess I would start out my path to physical therapy was a little different than most of the colleagues that I've met. Suzy's was more like what most people have going into physical therapy. My path to physical therapy was round a bend and I did this and I did that, but all of it is tools in the tool bag. So it all helps what you do. If I said to my younger self when I was 40, this is what I found that matches who I am. If I said that to my 22-year-old or 23-year-old self, the person that I was at that time was still growing and developing in my skills and my sense of myself. So it took being a naval officer and it took working in the commercial real estate world to learn about myself. So I guess the message I would give would be know yourself as well as you can. Know your strengths and know your weaknesses. Look at yourself with a real, truly honest eye, and not so much avoid your weaknesses, but learn from them, but focus on things that you're strong in.
Okay, okay. We got a minute left. Thank you for tuning in. I hope you guys got a better understanding of what cerebral palsy is and what it means to be independent. And my advice to any parent that is struggling to advocate or want to advocate for their child is just make sure you notice the mild signs and ask questions. And if your child is getting ready to start therapy, just make sure you're on it and make sure that the child has a strong support system. And make it fun because therapy isn't really boring. Like, turn on some music,